Hello, what's up? Welcome to the MJ Rowe Show, where we review music and stuff, I guess. She had collaborated and toured with tons of grime artists, particularly Wiley and Chipmunk. And today we review an album by one of those artists. Every year in music there is that long-awaited solo debut. And by what I mean by that is, every year there's a particular always at least one particular artist where they've gained high profile by collaborating with other artists. And so critics build up tons and tons of hype and expectations in the run-up to their eventual solo debut release. I think one of the most prime examples of this, to give an example, would be Emily Sandé. One surrounded by hype, but seems to live up to it. This is the album Process by Sampha. Now for those of you who don't know, Sampha is a British musician and he's signed to the same label as the XX, Young Turks. And he specialises in the modern dance music craze that is bass music. Sort of very mellow, laid back, but also very dark and experimental electronic music, often more for late night chill out than clubbing it out like the Ghetto Tracks. And he seems to have taken that inspiration from other artists on the label, particularly FKA Twigs, who was also an acclaimed R&B electronic act, who was also nominated for the Mercury Prize. We're yet to see if Sampha will win it. And Subtract, who is one of his many collaborators over the past few years. He soon turned from collaborating with British bass music artists to collaborating with some of the major critical stars in American R&B, such as Drake, Solange Knowles, and Frank Ocean, who actually has quite a similar sound with the sort of personal and piano-laden and highly on the experimental side. And you can most definitely see remnants of those albums on his current album, particularly on the track Chorus Sings, which has a very sort of oriental Japanese garden type feel to it, which is also available on the Subtract tracks Hold On and the Solange track Cranes in the Sky. But the fact that Subtract and Solange are at very different ends of the musical spectrum, it seems that maybe Sampha wasn't inspired by them, but they were in fact inspired by Sampha. So it clearly sets him apart as a very headstrong, independent auteur and artiste. And it definitely shows on this solo album that he is clearly a headstrong, independent artist. Like for years and years he was used to the bedroom-style recording method, and that is still retained throughout all of this. It has a distinctly personal DIY feel, just with the extremely high studio production quality to help elevate it to a grand status. But of course, when talking of influences, it's impossible to talk about bass music without talking about the JB. James Blake. Yes, James Blake is seen as the founding father of bass music, a guy who compared 70s soulful piano with the sort of dark, experimental nature of the late 2000s dubstep by the likes of Burial. And it's impossible not to listen to Process without thinking of James Blake, because all throughout, particularly on tracks where he's playing the piano, like the standout No One Knows Me Like the Piano and bass music is the signature style of James Blake. And also, this is a very minimalist record. Even though it has heavy production, it isn't all showy. It keeps things particularly simple and minimalist on all tracks. You know, if it has to go into a big electrical glitchy breakdown, it builds up gradually. And in fact, as on the standout track No One Knows Me Like the Piano, the only instrument there is the piano. And yes, as you'd expect, James Blake is also known for expertising in minimalism, often starting out with just him and the piano in the first half of the track, and then slowly but surely building up to the glitchy electronic breakdown. So, as with all bass music, James Blake influences here. But it isn't copied. It is by no means copied at all, in fact. Whereas Blake's music tended to be more cold and artsy, more calculated, sort of like the sparseness in compared to the very cryptic lyrics about loneliness and despair. Whereas on Sampha's record, basically it has a more personal touch to it. Basically, the lyrics are less cryptic. From what he's saying, you can easily tell what he's singing about and what they mean to him, particularly like being caught up in violence, having to hide from his feelings, personal loss, that sort of thing. And because what he sings about is more humanly relatable, his album actually has a warmer feel in compared to Blake's work. And this is most evident on the track, sorry to be mentioning this one a lot, but No One Knows Me Like the Piano, which is basically a song about how music helped him through his lonesome childhood, and also about his relationship with his mother and how he had to cope after her death. And this track is just absolutely perfect. Basically, as I said, it's purely minimalistic, it's just him and his piano, and as a result, it's purely personal. You know, it's nowhere for the emotion to hide, it's just this man and his relatable, purely human experience, and it just helps you connect with him strongly as you're listening to the track, and just drawn into the story as the lyrics go on. And as a result, it's just a hauntingly beautiful track. It's truly one where it's hard not to feel some form of shiver down your spine whilst listening to it. All throughout, the album has quite an odd mood, like it can either be eerie, late night chill, or maybe oddly cool darkness, kind of like what Massive Attack's feel is throughout their albums. And so the tone of the whole album is perfectly set from the opening track, Plastic 100 Degrees Celsius. Basically you get the eerie feel from the glitchy electronics and the sample of astronaut speech, which gives it a very Boards of Canada type vibe. But then you also get the late night chill feel of it when you have in the second half of the track you have the different synth lines lolloping gently over each other, and in fact that's a sign of the impeccable production on the album when you can actually make out very subtle details like that. And of course here you get the pretty much usual on this album, the Oriental Japanese garden type twang to it, which, now that I think about it, could be classed as Sampha's unique sound, signature sound in fact. You also get more brilliant lyrics from this track, such as, you know, the whole idea of him under emotional strain feel like melting, burning plastic. And yes, all throughout the album you get this sort of dark yet highly poetic lyricism, particularly lines like these incomplete kisses, which is of course from the track Incomplete Kisses, which I actually say is sort of like the most 80s sounding track, that not particularly in the lyrical content, just in the way the synths come across in that one, which I essentially say again has the eerie but also comforting vibe, like it's set up like an FKA Twigs track, but lacks the aggression there. In fact, I'd be more likely to compare it to the works of KTB, because it's just very typical of the post-dubstep scene, yet it's still brilliant. It just has some unique feel to it that makes it stand out against all others in the crowd. Another standout track, and probably the catchiest track on the album, is the track Blood on Me, one that perfectly captures the cool darkness feel that, as I mentioned before, was pioneered by Massive Attack and Portishead back in the 90s. With all the instruments, whether it be the hip-hop beats or the ever-prevalent piano, help add to the feeling of doom around the track as he sings the very personal lyrics about being involved in gang violence or just trying to run and hide from his emotions. It's one that can be interpreted either way. In fact, speaking of his vocals are brilliant as well. As in, they've got that R&B power to but they also show the emotion perfectly. As I say, they've got the power, but they're very restrained, he's holding back on a lot of the tracks. You know, he's got a clear sense of vulnerability coming through from the very utterance of his words. The best tracks? Easily No One Knows Me Like the Piano, because it's just perfectly structured, perfectly produced, the lyrics are absolutely beautiful, the music's absolutely beautiful, it's just an achingly haunting track. Blood on Me, because it perfectly captures the cool darkness feel to it, whilst remaining the typical eerie frown throughout the album, and just highly engaging lyrics, vocals, just everything's brilliant on those particular two tracks there. Then there's Incomplete Kisses, which again continues the lyrical beauty found throughout the album, and despite some observatory theory, it actually has quite a comforting feel that is perfect for late night chill and will easily appeal to fans of the more poppy side of the post-dubstep scene, e.g. Jamie Woo and Solange or KTB. And then one track that the critics aren't keen on, but I'm a big fan of, is the track Take Me Inside, which is the shortest one on the album and quite similar to So No One Knows Me Like the Piano, but it's basically It's basically got the James Blake formula, the singer and the piano for the first half, glitchy electronic breakdown in the second half, so it seems a bit too typical of the genre to most people listening. But for what it is, it's absolutely brilliant. Basically, it's got the distorted piano at the start, either creating a really dark feel, but also feeling oddly warm and personal. And then the lyrics and vocals just gradually drawing you in. And with the electronic breakdown at the end, it just, again, slowly builds, keeping your attention firmly on the track. So, in fact, that's another good thing about the album. Basically, it can work as either listening music or background music, as in it's very minimalist, but it builds gradually, as in things keep on changing. It's never boring. There's always something going on to keep the listener interested, to make it highly engaging. As for worst tracks, probably Under, and also the final track, What Shouldn't I Be? Just because they are the closest to boring tracks on the album, because if there's one flaw for the album, it's lack of variety, and those are the two tracks that are the worst for it. They're basically doing what all the other tracks are doing, but with no unique features to stand out, so they're easily ones where you'll just skip on Spotify. I give this album a solid 8. Say it's the vocals perfectly match the lyrics are highly poetic, personal, and just all-round engaging and enthralling. The music manages to have that sort of bedroom feel, which adds to the personal lyrics and vocals, but yeah, it is all enhanced by the impeccable studio production, which makes it a highly engaging listen. It can work as either late night chill, and just captures the perfect mix between cool darkness, eerie bleakness, and, as I said, late night chill. Sorry if I'm sounding repetitive or muddled in this particular review, but yeah, it perfectly captures the best parts of the post-dubstep and bass music scene. So if you love that type of music, definitely check it out. If you like this album, I'd also recommend the albums A Seat at the Table by Solange, the self-titled debut by Subtract, and The Colour in Anything by James Blake. Let's just hope Sampha eventually turns out to be the one who wins this year's Mercury Prize. Oh well, ta-da!